Hey guys, it's me again, Omar, growth partner here at Move. And today I want to talk about a mistake that feels safe when you're growing, but can quietly create a lot of problems later. And today, that is something that's quite common with a lot of DTC brands. And if you've ever heard yourself say that, I'm just going to be over ordering just in case. So basically, ordering more inventory than you really need because you're scared of stocking out. And look, I get it. Stockouts are painful. They mess with your revenue, they mess with ad performance, and they frustrate customers. And once again, you've been burned by one bad stockout, and it makes total sense that your instinct is let's just buy a few extra stocks so that we do not have to deal with that again. And that's where the trap starts. Because trying to protect yourself from stockouts by over ordering can create a whole different set of problems. And a lot of them are slower, quieter, and more expensive than people realize. So, in this episode, I want to talk about mistake number 6, over ordering just in case, why it feels smart, and how it turns into a problem later, and what to do instead if you want a healthier supply chain and a healthier cash flow. So let's get into it. So, what is the mistake? The mistake is ordering from fear instead of ordering from a plan. It is when the thinking becomes, I would rather have too much than not enough. And again, that sounds reasonable, especially if you have dealt with delays, supplier issues, missed lead times, weird freight problems, or a sudden sales spike that totally caught you off guard. And a lot of brands have been through that. So the next time they place a PO, they play defense. They add more units, they increase buffer, they go a little heavier than needed. And that's where it starts. You go a little heavier and then a little heavier again. And before long, they are just carrying way more inventory than the business actually needs. Not because the forecast supports it, not because there is a clear sell through plan, just because it feels safer. And that is the part I want to highlight. Over ordering usually does not come from confidence, it comes from fear. Fear of missing sales, fear of running out, fear of repeating past mistakes, fear of not trusting the supplier, fear of not trusting the data. So instead of fixing the system, brands try to cushion the system. They buy their way into feeling safe. And sometimes that works for a while, but later it gets expensive because extra inventory is not just neutral. It's not just product sitting there harmlessly. It just ties up cash. It reduces your flexibility. It makes forecasting messier. It increases storage costs as well. And it creates pressure to sell through things that may not be moving so well. And I think a pretty big one is it definitely hides demand problems. It makes your SKU complexity even worse. And it can lead to bad decisions later because now you're managing enough inventory you should not have bought in the first place. That is the compounding effect. At first, over ordering feels like protection. Later, it becomes weight. Because when you are smaller, when you can carry a bit more inventory and survive it, maybe you have enough room. Maybe the volume is manageable. Maybe the team can work around it. Maybe the cash flow is comfortable but not fatal. But as the business grows, the cost of carrying too much inventory gets heavier. Now, more money is tied up. Now, storage matters more. Now, your SKU count is bigger. Another thing to think about is now your planning gets a little bit more complex. Your old inventory starts competing with new bets. And that is the part people underestimate. Stockouts are loud, so everyone is scared of them. Excess inventory is quieter, so people tolerate it longer. And that's just the reality of the mistakes that a couple of these founders make. And with that, it definitely can choke a business. It can slow your decision making, it reduces your cash flexibility, and it creates fake confidence. It makes teams think that they're covered when really they're just carrying more risk in a different form. Because inventory is only an asset if it moves. If it sits too long, it starts behaving more like liability. So let me give you an example. So we worked with a brand and they have been through enough supply chain pain, and their default response became, let's just order extra. They had dealt with delays before, and they had felt the pain of being out of stock. And understandably, they did not want to repeat that. So, what do? They order by gut feel. So, every reorder had a bit of fear built into it, a little more here and a little more there, and a little bit of extra coverage just in case. A few SKUs pushed higher because they did not want to get caught short. And on the surface, it looked like they were being cautious, but once they looked deeper, it was clear that the business was starting to feel the effects. Cash was tighter than it needed to be. There was inventory sitting longer than expected, and some SKUs were moving well, but others were dragging. Planning was getting a little bit more blurry, of course, because there was so much inventory in the system. And the team was not actually more confident, they were just carrying more stock. And that happens a lot. We hear it all the time. More inventory does not always mean more clarity. Sometimes it just creates more noise because now we have to think about what to push, what to discount, what to prioritize, what to reorder, and what not to reorder, and how to make sense of demand when the business is sitting on too much product. In this case, the real issue was not that they needed more inventory. The real issue was that they needed a better replenishment strategy. They needed a clearer way of forecasting, better understanding of SKU performance, a smarter buffer, and of course, better reorder timing. And something more realistic is they also need a more realistic view of what risk they actually needed to be covered. And once that changed, the business got lighter. Not reckless, not underbought, just cleaner. And of course, with having all of that solved, cash flow improved. Decision making improved, the team had better visibility, and they stopped using extra inventory as a substitute for planning. That is the shift. Because overordering feels like control, but a lot of time it is actually uncertainty in disguise. So, what should you do instead? First, separate real risk from emotional risk. This is a big one. Yes, stockouts are real. Yes, you need buffer. Yes, you should protect the business from supplier and freight variability. But not every fear deserves inventory. Sometimes what feels risky is just uncertainty you have not yet measured properly. So ask yourself this: what is the actual lead time? What variable demand is it going to be really? And which SKU actually needs more coverage? And where are we consistently getting surprised? What problem are we trying to solve by ordering more? Second, build better with intention. Safety stock is not the same as panic stock. A healthy buffer is based on lead times, sales velocity, supplier consistency, and how quickly you can react. Panic stock is just ordering extra because it feels safer. Those are very different things. Third, get more specifics by SKU. One of the biggest mistakes brands make is treating all inventory like it has the same risk profile. And to be honest, it doesn't. Some SKUs are stable and predictable, some are volatile, some deserve deeper coverage, some absolutely do not. The more specific you get, the less likely you are to overbuy across the board. Fourth, fix the system instead of padding the symptom. If you do not trust the supplier, fix that. If lead times are messy, address that. If forecasting is weak, improve that. If reorder points are unclear, build them. Because throwing more inventory at a weak system usually does not solve the weakness. It just makes the weak system more expensive. And fifth, remember that cash is inventory too. A lot of brands forget that. Cash gives you options, cash lets you move, cash lets you react, and cash lets you invest in better opportunities. When too much of it is tied up on inventory that is sitting, you lose flexibility. And flexibility matters a lot when you are growing. Now, let me give you some permission here. You don't need to eliminate all stockout risk. You don't need to buy your way into perfect certainty. You don't need to carry heavy inventory just to feel safe. And definitely do not need to assume that more inventory automatically means better planning. What you can safely ignore is the urge to overreact every single time you remember a painful stockout. What can you safely ignore as well is the idea that the safest operator is the one with the fullest warehouse, or fear based ordering that is not backed by actual demand or actual risk. Because the goal is to build a supply chain that is responsive, healthy, and financially sane. That means enough coverage, yes, but not so much that the inventory itself becomes the problem. So, if I could leave you with one thing, it would be this: do not use extra inventory to make yourself feel safe. Use better planning to make yourself safer. This is the better long-term move, because brands that scale well are not usually the ones that are hoarding the most stock. They're the ones that understand their demand, trust the numbers, and build systems that let them reorder with confidence. And if this one felt a little bit too familiar, that is a good sign. It means you are catching on early. And I think I pretty much gave you guys a little bit of an insight on how not to overstock, because we don't want that to happen again. So, if in any case, we're going to be seeing you again in the next episode. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.